All right, ready to dive into a new topic? Today, we're strapping on our boots and venturing into the world of tracking.
And I'm not talking about your phone's GPS. We're going old school, unearthing the secrets of this ancient skill.
Using, of course, a trusty guide.
That's right. We're cracking open this SAS guide to tracking to uncover what was essential for survival then.
It's still surprisingly relevant today, even in our digital age.
Absolutely.
So consider this deep dive your crash course on everything
Well, I
from
bet you think you know.
reading footprints in the mud.
Oh, there's so much more to it.
Well, let's just say there's a lot more to tracking than you might think.
You'd be amazed. The book really emphasizes how much goes into it. It's observation, deduction.
It's like being a detective, but instead of a bustling city.
Your crime scene is the great outdoors.
Okay, I'm hooked already. But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Right.
let's start with the basics. What exactly is tracking beyond just following footprints?
You've got to start somewhere. The book describes it as the art of spotting and interpreting signs
Signs, okay.
to gain information about your quarry. And that sign could be anything,
Anything.
from a broken twig to a slightly disturbed patch of leaves.
It's about, like, seeing what's out of place, what doesn't belong.
Exactly. A good tracker doesn't just see a footprint. They see the story that footprint tells.
So, like, was the person running or walking? Were they carrying a heavy backpack? Did they stop to rest nearby?
You're getting it. It's all about those subtle clues most people would just walk right past. But a real tracker,
They know how to read between the lines.
or should we say, between the blades of grass.
So we're talking about going from seeing a footprint to understanding the story behind it.
And that's where tuning in comes in.
Tuning in. Now, that's a phrase I haven't heard before.
It's all about getting into the mindset of your quarry.
Hold on, are we talking about, like, literally becoming the thing we're tracking?
In a way, yes. Imagine you're tracking a deer through the woods. Tuning in means thinking like that deer.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Where would it look for food? Where would it go to escape danger?
So if you know enough about animal behavior,
You can practically predict their next move.
I can see how that would be invaluable for a wildlife tracker.
Oh, absolutely. But it's not just for tracking animals.
Really?
This applies to humans, too. Even in today's world, we leave a trail of signs everywhere we go.
Well, we all leave a digital footprint these days. But I have a feeling you're talking about more than just our internet history.
You got it. Think about it. The way someone walks,
Okay.
the state of their clothes, even what they might have discarded along the way,
Crash. Really?
it all paints a picture. Let's say you find a crumpled receipt on the ground. That one little piece of paper could tell you.
When someone was in the area, what they bought.
Even where they might have been headed next.
Okay, now you're blowing my mind a little. These seemingly insignificant details,
They become clues.
and if you know what to look for,
You can piece together a whole story. It's like a puzzle, just waiting to be solved.
I'm starting to see that. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
Because we can't forget about those other senses.
Ah, you're thinking what I'm thinking.
I'm ready to trade in my phone for a heightened sense of smell and hearing.
Let's talk about how trackers use all their senses to uncover clues most people wouldn't even know were there.
All right, senses it is. But how about we start with smell?
Smell. It's more powerful than you think.
I'm all ears, or should I say noses?
It really is. And the way air carries scent can be a game changer.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So does that mean a tracker needs to be downwind to pick up a scent?
You got it. Think about it. Hot air rises, right?
Right.
Well, the book explains that during the day, that rising hot air carries scent uphill, but at night, it's the cold air that drags the scent down.
So a tracker who knows what they're doing can use this to their advantage.
Exactly. A savvy tracker, they're not just randomly sniffing the air, they're using their knowledge of the terrain, the time of day.
To track down their target.
You've got it. It's like playing chess with the wind, using its movements to your advantage.
That's a cool way to put it.
Yeah.
And speaking of our senses, what about sound? I imagine that plays a pretty important role in tracking too.
Absolutely. Think about being in a dense forest. Visibility is limited. You can't see more than a few feet in front of you.
So what do?
You listen. Sound becomes your eyes. And an experienced tracker, they can tell the difference between all those subtle sounds of animals moving around.
What do you mean? Give me some examples.
Well, they can tell you if it's a bird taking flight, a squirrel scampering up a tree, even a deer cautiously picking its way through the underbrush.
Just by listening.
Precisely. But it's not just about hearing a sound, it's about knowing what that sound means. For example, that snapping twig you hear, it could just be a deer, just strolling along. Or it could be a wild boar charging straight at you.
Okay, that's a pretty important difference to be able to tell.
Exactly. It could be a matter of life or death in the wild.
Seriously, talk about a sensory wake-up call.
Yeah,
It makes you realize just how much information we filter out when we're not paying attention.
it's true. Our brains are constantly bombarded with sensory input.
You know, it reminds me of that story in the book about the SAS soldier who smells camel meat being cooked.
Ah, yes. That's a perfect example of how these tracking skills, they're not just for wilderness survival.
They come in handy in other situations, too.
Right, because in that story, the soldier, he smells the camel meat, and he knows,
The enemy is nearby.
even though there's no other sign of them.
Just that faint whiff of dinner cooking over an open fire.
It just goes to show our senses can be incredibly powerful tools, even in the most unexpected situations.
Okay, so we've talked about sight, smell, sound. What about touch? Now, I'll be honest, this is the one I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around.
Okay, I get where you're coming from. It's not as obvious as the others. But think about it like this. You're tracking someone through the woods,
Okay.
and you come across a patch of ground that's just slightly warmer than the surrounding area.
All right, I'm picturing it. What does that mean?
That warmth, it could mean that someone was recently resting there. That heat, it's a trace of their body heat. Or imagine you're feeling the soil around a footprint.
Okay, I'm doing that right now.
Is it damp, dry, crumbly? Those subtle differences in texture, they can tell you how old the track is.
Because a fresh footprint in damp soil is going to look different than one that's been baking in the sun all day.
You got it.
It's just amazing how much we can learn by paying attention to the world around us,
I know. And those subtle clues, they can make all the difference.
especially if you're trying to piece together a trail.
They're what separates a casual observer from a real tracker.
Speaking of tracking, can we talk about the part that's always fascinated me? Stalking,
Ah, yes. The art of becoming invisible.
like a ninja in the wilderness.
Okay, so spill the beans. What secrets does the book reveal about becoming a master of disguise in the wild?
Well, for starters, it's not just about wearing the right camouflage.
There's more to it.
Oh yeah, it's about breaking up your outline, eliminating shine, and moving in a way that doesn't draw attention. So I'm guessing mud comes in handy. I've seen those war movies where they're always smearing mud on their faces.
You'd be surprised. The book talks about how soldiers in the Dhofar War, that was a conflict back in the 1960s and 70s, they used mud to dull their equipment.
To camouflage themselves.
Exactly. It kept them hidden from the enemy.
So even if you're wearing camo, a glint of sunlight off a shiny canteen or a watch.
Could give you away.
Wow, those small details really matter.
They can make all the difference. The key takeaway is to reduce your visual signature as much as possible.
Makes sense. But what about movement? You can't just slap on some camouflage and expect to disappear.
Absolutely not. You have to move with purpose, be deliberate about every step. The book even talks about specific techniques like the ghost walk and the catwalk.
The ghost walk. Now, I really want to see a visual of that.
They're designed to make you practically silent and invisible.
So it's all about moving with intention, being super aware of every step, becoming one with the shadows.
You've got it. And the book really emphasizes that this takes practice. Lots and lots of practice. You need to understand how to use the terrain to your advantage.
The vegetation, even the weather.
It all plays a role.
Speaking of understanding our environment, let's talk about a crucial aspect of tracking. Determining the age of a track. I imagine knowing if you're on a cold trail or if your target is right around the corner is pretty important.
It can be the difference between success and failure.
So how do you do it?
That's where the real detective work comes in. Trackers look at the weather, the ground type,
Okay, that makes sense.
and get this even insect behavior.
Insect behavior? Wait, what? How can you tell time by looking at a bug?
You'd be surprised. Imagine you're looking at a footprint and you see ants starting to build a nest around it.
All right, I'm picturing it.
That tells you the track's been there a while, at least long enough for those ants to get settled.
It's like having a whole team of tiny forensic experts.
Exactly. They're nature's little helpers.
I love it. But tell me more about this whole concept of determining the age of a track. The book mentions something called the age stand.
It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It sounds like it.
And it's a perfect example of how trackers take what they know and put it into practice.
The age stand. It sounds like something out of a detective movie. You have to break this one down for me.
Picture this. A miniature crime scene, but instead of a dimly lit alley, it's set up out in nature.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Trackers use this age scan to get better at figuring out how much time has passed.
So like a timing exercise.
Exactly. They'll create a collection of tracks and signs, footprints, broken twigs, maybe even something like a candy wrapper, and they leave it all out in the elements.
Exposed to the elements.
Okay, and then it's all about watching how those objects change over time.
I'm guessing a footprint in wet soil is going to change differently than one baking under the sun.
Exactly. And a broken twig, that'll slowly start to change color as it dries out.
Makes sense.
The point is, by carefully documenting all these changes,
Trackers can develop this almost sixth sense.
when it comes to knowing how old a track really is.
So it's like training your eye to spot those subtle details that reveal how much time has passed.
Precisely. You start to see the subtle ways nature leaves its mark and how those marks change over time.
This has been fascinating. I feel like I'm learning a whole new way of looking at the world.
And that's the beauty of tracking, isn't it? It really opens your eyes to a whole hidden world. And the best part is,
Anyone can learn to do it.
it just takes practice and a willingness to really pay attention to what's around you.
You know, that actually brings up a good question.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about how valuable tracking is.
Right.
But in today's world, with all our fancy technology, drones, GPS, is tracking really still relevant?
You'd be surprised. It's a question a lot of people ask, and the book actually addresses this directly.
Oh, I'm all ears.
See, technology, it gives us some amazing tools.
For sure.
But it can't replace good old-fashioned observation and deduction.
So it's not a question of technology or our tracking.
It's about using them together.
Now, that's interesting.
Imagine a wildlife tracker who's got a drone.
Okay.
They can use that drone to quickly search a huge area for, say, signs of endangered elephants.
That would save so much time and effort.
Or think about an anti-poaching unit using thermal imaging to track poachers through a dense jungle,
In the dark.
even in complete darkness.
It's like giving those trackers a superpower.
That's a great way to put it because technology gives us these incredible tools, but it's still up to the tracker to make sense of it all.
So the future of tracking.
It's looking pretty exciting.
It's like this amazing blend of
Yeah.
ancient wisdom and cutting-edge technology.
Who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll have AI algorithms analyzing footprints,
It'd be wild.
predicting where animals will go, even alerting trackers to suspicious activity.
It's like having a digital tracking partner right by your side.
Exactly.
Well, I have to say this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the world of tracking.
It's pretty amazing stuff.
We've gone from footprints in the mud to high-tech surveillance. It's incredible how much we can learn just by observing the world around us.
And remembering, as the book says, that anyone can learn to do this.
That's right. So to everyone listening, we challenge you.
Yep.
Ditch the GPS, put on your detective hat, and head outside.
See what stories you can uncover.